Hello, everyone. My name is Paige Beverly. I'm a senior here at Goucher College. I'm a French major and education minor, and welcome to my presentation for the 2020 Goucher College Symposium. So, for my presentation, I will be presenting my internship and my dissertation that I did during my time with IFE Brussels in the spring of 2019. And with my research, I did a comparison of two education system in Brussels and the education system in Baltimore County. And I compared these two school systems within the domain of four aspects that I found to be extremely important in education. So without further ado, we'll get into my presentation. So before I begin, I wanted to give you a brief introduction of where I interned and the topic of my dissertation. So, in Belgium, I interned at a school called L'Institut Sainte-Famille Delmat, and this school was a primary and secondary school located in Schaerbeek, which is a small municipality in Brussels. So, the topic for my research, as I explained, is a comparison of two school systems. And I chose to do this research because I'm extremely passionate about education and getting into why things are taught the way they're taught, why school systems function the way they do, what works and what doesn't work. That all really fascinates me. So that's why I wanted to do this particular project and to compare two school systems that I'll have experience working in is felt really beneficial to me. Um, so within my research, I evaluated four aspects within educational institutions. So I'll be discussing teaching pedagogy, the health programs in each school system, the use of technology, and the enrollment process. So here I also provided my thesis kind of to get us started on my presentation. So my thesis was which school system functions more effectively in each of these domains, and is it possible in regard to these four areas that I listed above to compare the educational systems in Belgium and in the United States. I won't go too much into detail with this slide, but it's basically just an abstract for your convenience if you want to pause this presentation and take a look. It basically further explains what I just explained to you guys and gives an overall summary of what I'm going to be presenting to you today. This comparison between the school I was working at in Brussels and a school here in Baltimore County, Western School of Technology and Environmental Science. So next, before I really get into the bulk of my research, I wanted to provide you guys with a side-by-side comparison of the structure of each education system. So on the left side, we have the structure of the education system in Belgium. And basically how this works is that there are three linguistic communities that the Belgian school system is divided into. So we have the French community, we have the Flemish community, and we have the Germanophone, principally Dutch community. And within each of these three linguistic communities, there are three sort of networks of education. So we have officiel, officiel subventionné, and libre subventionné. So with officiel, that is the most general sort of community in that this school system functions under the founding community that the school is in. And then we have officio subventionné, which is the network of schools that functions under the power of that province or that municipality which the school is in. And then we have Libre Subventionné, which is controlled by or funded by private corporations and organizations. So where l'Institut Saint-Famille, the school I interned at, falls into this organization, it is under Libre Subventionné, and it is in the French community. And on the right, we have the organization of the American school system. So we know that American schools are largely dependent on state government, geographic location, and type of education. And the two main types of education we typically see are private education versus public education. More specifically, here I'll be talking about public education in Maryland and specifically in Baltimore County. So here you see the different types of public education, but we'll specifically be focusing on magnet schools since Western School of Technology and Environmental Science is a magnet school. So the first sort of domain that I did research on is education pedagogy. And within this domain, I focused on PISA first and foremost. I felt that was important for a global aspect. So PISA, if you don't know, is the program for international student assessment, and this assessment is done under the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. So basically, this test is provided to 15-year-old students across the globe to compare their performance in math, science, and in reading. So I felt it important to compare the performance of Belgian students and the performance of American students on this PISA exam. Then I went into creative education versus teaching that is oriented towards evaluation. So creative education, as I defined it, is education that isn't centered on like a strict curriculum. Teachers allow like unorthodox methods to be a part of their classroom. And then we have teaching that is specifically geared towards testing, and so that students can perform well on a specific test or national exam that is going to be administered. And then I explained a sort of levels of education. So this could be like grade levels and specific grade levels, how they're organized in Belgium and how they're organized within the United States. And I included graduation and dropout rates as a comparison as well. The next domain that I concentrated on were health programs in each school system and in each school. So in l'Institut Saint-Famille, I got to see the system called PMS, or the PMS centers. And these centers basically provide health services to students within these school systems free of charge. They get access to like a psychologist, they get actual medical attention. They emphasize social health. Basically, any domain of physical, mental, emotional health that you could think of that a student would need, they provide. And they provide it free of charge, of course. And then I compared this system side by side with health services that we see in Baltimore County School. And I noticed that typically you usually see a school nurse, and maybe there are some outside partnerships with clinics and things of that nature for public schools. But aside from that, there is not as much support really as you see with the PMS centers within the Belgian school system. So the third domain that I, of course, wanted to discuss was this access to technology. Of course, in the 21st century, we cannot talk about education without including the use of technology. So, of course, I talked about the use of technology that I saw in my internship at the school in Brussels. So basically, they used a lot of a system called Smart School, and they used a lot of these active boards, which you see an example of here. And there were many other intricate systems in place involving the use of technology to help educate their students. And honestly, I saw a lot of similarities with the use of technology in the school I was working at and schools here in Baltimore County and specifically at Western Tech. Um, as far as the use of smart boards or active boards and the use of computers by students, having a computer lab or a place or a library where research can be done. So I felt both schools did a great job in providing free access to technology and integrated technology as an important way of conveying information in their classrooms. And finally, we have the enrollment process for each school system. So, how it works in Belgium, to give a brief overview, school enrollment is required starting at the age of 6. So, of course, the organization is not typically how we would see it in the United States, where students usually begin school at 5 years old. But however, there is still that similar obligation to enroll your students at a certain age. So, school enrollment is required in Belgium from 6 years old to 18 years old, very similarly to the United States, where you're typically required to be enrolled in school from age 5 or in kindergarten to 18 or your very last year of high school. And um, I found that in Belgium, like enrolling in college and in university was strongly encouraged and was almost not seen as an option, whereas in the United States, while it is strongly encouraged for students to go to college, it's not really seen as a necessary option for everyone. It doesn't seem like an obligation. However, in our system, we know internally that it kind of functions as an obligation as far as success in your career and professional world. Um, but that was just a really interesting comparison I wanted to include as well. So, in conclusion, to wrap everything up, I found that these school systems are not directly comparable. And you'll see what I mean as I go on to explain. So, concerning teaching pedagogy, I found that there was this important need for a global perspective with PISA as well as a local perspective on performance and grades and this, that, and the third between the school systems in order to have a fair comparison. Um, but in fact, students, it's difficult to get a true comparison of students because students are so different in these school systems, encourage education in such different ways and use various teaching methods between various instructors, of course. However, with health programs, I've found through my research that the Belgian school system has a lot more success with health programs than in the United States, simply based on the PMS system and the fact that they provide more services and more support, and of course, free of charge to their students. Whereas in the United States, we see just the use of a school nurse or maybe one or two connections with outside clinics and health programs, but it's not as large as you see in Belgium. I found that there was this similar or same importance of technology in in each school system, and then discussing enrollment. There are different processes and different methods of enrollment. The enrollment process in Belgium is a bit more complex than the enrollment process here, despite having the same age requirement to be enrolled in school. So I found that overall, concerning these 4 categories, and despite picking specific schools, it's difficult to give a definitive answer as to which school system functions more effectively. um, with these domains because performance and results are so varying. And this is why I think there's a definite need to expand upon my research, of course. Whether this is done by me or by anyone else, I think it would be really interesting to see if anyone else found the same things that I found within my research. So this concludes my presentation, and I want to thank you very, very much, and merci, for uh, checking out my presentation for the symposium this year, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it was very informative to you. Thank you again.